Welcome to the Digital Transformation Podcast, interviews with best-selling authors, innovative thought leaders, and top-shelf executives, all driving today's digital success. This is the show that will help you take advantage of digital transformation to build your business and career. I'm your host, Kevin Craine, and I'm so pleased that you're listening. Our guest today is Nick Jain. Nick Jain is the CEO of IdeaScale, makers of an innovative management solution that inspires people to take action on their ideas. And after earning his MBA at Harvard, Nick started his career at places like McKinsey and Bain Capital, and then spent some time on Wall Street working with a number of hedge funds. But today, he's known as a professional turnaround CEO with an impressive track record. And that's what we'll be discussing today, the role of innovation and digital transformation in turning a company around. So Nick, welcome to the program today. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Your first company was a $150 million revenue trucking company, and your second was a small shoe company. And in both of those organizations, you spurred some significant growth. At KYX, a 40% increase in average revenue per unit and 300% increase in gross profit, for example. Now you're with IdeaScale, and after only 18 months, you've doubled growth and tripled profits there. Indeed, it's an impressive turnaround. What is your secret?
I think the biggest thing is really understanding how businesses work, and the fundamentals of what makes a trucking company work versus a shoe company versus software company are actually really similar. So really, if you have a deep understanding of what makes a business work, what makes it tick, how it's all the parts of the business fit together, then it's actually really easy to begin building a plan, actioning a plan on how to turn the business around. And I think that's been a key driver of my success, both here at IdeaScale and at some of the prior organizations.
Now, as a grad student at Harvard, did you ever envision yourself becoming a turnaround specialist?
Kind of, but kind of not. So look, I spent most of my career on Wall Street, learning all the ins and outs of what makes businesses work, but I ultimately didn't want to be an investor or an advisor to businesses. I actually wanted to run a business. So I don't know whether I envisioned myself being a turnaround CEO per se, but I definitely wanted to sit in the big chair at some point. And I've been working for the past 5 or 10 years to eventually have that opportunity, which thankfully the owners of this business gave me a few years ago.
Now, I want to get your perspective a little bit on what makes for a good turnaround, and especially connecting it with digital transformation. So specifically, we talk a lot about digital transformation. We can go into some of the details, but how does digital transformation factor into your turnaround strategies for success?
Sure. So IdeaScale is actually a really good example because a lot of the turnaround has really been driven by about two things here. One is kind of some of the incentives and organization of people, but then secondly is actually the technologies we've used. And within technologies, we've done two major things. Number one is we fundamentally switched around certain technologies or replaced certain technologies. And the second is aggressively adapted other technologies. And I'll give examples of this. So on the aggressively adapting new technologies, we aggressively started using ChatGPT, pretty much the day it was launched, not just in our sales and marketing, but also in our social media, in our engineering departments, in our internal communication. So we were aggressive adopters of chat, and not just ChatGPT, but a variety of the generative AI technologies long before they started getting all the media buzz that, this is something you need to do. And then secondly, in terms of replacing other technologies, we realized that there were systems we had in place that were kind of okay, but people didn't like. And a good example is we had Salesforce in place, which is obviously, it's a major CRM that many, many companies use. But turns out our people didn't actually like it because it was kind of a technology that originated in the 90s, and it required senior people forcing it down onto junior sales personnel. We switched to HubSpot, and my sales and marketing team lives and breathes in HubSpot because it's a fundamentally better technology, at least for us. And so that was a situation where we replaced technology A with technology B, which was similar, but was actually better for our people and our processes. And all of a sudden, people are actually using it, which means we actually get the benefits of that technology rather than just cost.
All right, that's cool. Let's unpack that a little bit because I'm very curious about what you're. First, I want to ask a little bit more about ChatGPT. We hear a lot about ChatGPT. We talk a lot about it over the last year. Almost every interview I do now with some sort of discussion about generative AI or AI, certainly in general. You said that at IdeaScale that you folks were aggressive adopters of ChatGPT, perhaps even before it was cool to do so.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more. What do you mean by that? How do you really use it? Okay. How do you really use it in ways that really matter?
Sure. So I'll give a really silly example, and then I'll give more impactful examples. So when I joined, we basically had no social media presence, and we didn't have the staffing or dedicated social media marketing manager the way a lot of other organizations, both large and small, do. So I was on a trip to visit my wife in Europe. I'm sitting in Amsterdam and realize, hey, we should have a social media presence. So I fire up ChatGPT, give it some instructions, give it some context, and have it basically write out hundreds of social media posts. So in probably 2 hours of work, me sitting in a bar, having pizza, having a beer, could basically programmed in hundreds of hours of social media marketing work that was probably higher quality than if you hired, a fresh college grad to do. And so all of a sudden, in 2 hours, we got basically half of a full-time employee's work done, and probably at higher quality. And the impact of that is, if you actually look at our social media presence, I am gaining more followers for IdeaScale's company page by a factor of 3 than all of my competitors combined, and probably with 1/100th the work. So that is an enormous gain in product. And that's a silly example for social media, but you can imagine that was something we did, I think, January of 2023. So probably 2 or 3 months after all the generative AI stuff launched. A more impactful example, and candidly, I don't think is unique to us, but is something a lot of technology companies are adopting, is using it very aggressively on their engineering side. So almost all of our engineers are using generative AI technologies for coding, which has 2 main benefits. Number one, it makes, for the senior coders who are very good at what they do, it means they can focus on the complex engineering tasks rather than the simple ones. And then for the junior engineers or engineers who are less skilled, they can actually just do more complex tasks that they may not otherwise have had the training to do. So all of a sudden, it's resulted in a dramatic increase in for our software engineering talent. And again, that's something that I don't think is unique to us, because a lot of organizations have discovered that as well.
Those are super powerful examples of ChatGPT or AI application, digital transformation in action. So those are examples of adopting a new technology or a new technique. You also mentioned that you replaced some technologies that weren't working for you, and I want to ask a little bit more. I don't want to bash Salesforce or endorse HubSpot in any kind of way, but you're coming from a real world perspective here. You're basically saying, look, we were using Salesforce, and but it wasn't really working for us, and people didn't really dig it, and it was suboptimal in just the way that we were adopting it. We switched the tool, and all of a sudden now, we're much more fruitful. What were some of the aspects of the HubSpot or the reason for moving away that really have provided that spark that really have made the difference?
So firstly, as a matter of disclosure, this is the third organization where I've switched from Salesforce to HubSpot on my being the driver. So I'm a big HubSpot advocate. I'm not being compensated by them, obviously. But I think it's
they are not paying us, however.
Yeah. And look, Salesforce is like a $300 billion company. They've been extraordinarily successful, but they suffer from something that's not their fault, which is Salesforce was a technology developed in the early 1990s. It was designed to be installed on your computer in a pre-internet age, in a pre-cloud, pre-SaaS age. And they have since then they have this huge installed base of, thousands of organizations that are basically plug into the way things were done in the 90s. HubSpot or other, HubSpot-like CRMs were built native to the cloud. They're meant to sit on the web somewhere rather than on someone's desktop. The way they think about their user interface, the way they think about collaboration, integration with other technologies is simpler. And the most practical example of this is there was a fundamental revolution somewhere around 2008 in software, which is software was prior to that, when you installed software, you needed to go through a manual, you needed to go to a tutorial. And somewhere around 2008, almost all good software companies went through this design revolution, which is, hey, anybody, it could be somebody 60 years old who's not digital native, or somebody who's 16 years old and is a digital native. They should be able to install software and it should work. Best example is TikTok, right? My 70-year-old parents can install TikTok and use it without knowing anything about social media. Then that is something that HubSpot or HubSpot-like technologies do really well. And that's why it's so much easier to implement in an organization.
Did you know we have a sister podcast? That's right. It's called Everyday MBA, and it was just ranked by Listen Notes in the top 1% most popular podcasts globally. And we're really jazzed and want to be sure that you know about it too. If you listen to this show, you'll love Everyday MBA. It's a similar format, and each week I talk to innovative thought leaders, best-selling authors, and top-shelf executives all about business success and techniques that you may not learn in business school. And after nearly 500 episodes, I've had the pleasure and the honor of speaking with some of today's best in the world of business, covering a wide range of topics. So check it out. That's Everyday MBA. Find it everywhere you find your podcasts now, or go to everyday-mba.com.
You're listening to the Digital Transformation Podcast.
We are here today with Nick Jain. He is the CEO of IdeaScale. They are makers of an innovation management solution that inspires people to take action on their ideas. Nick is a professional turnaround CEO, and that's what we're here talking about, the role of innovation and digital transformation in turning a company around. Now, Nick, I want to ask a little bit about IdeaScale. The IdeaScale platform enables organizations to collect and prioritize ideas from their employees and their customers and stakeholders, and then works to help facilitate the collaboration and engagement by allowing folks to submit and discuss and vote on ideas and stuff like that, and fostering really a culture of innovation within the organization. That sounds great. The technology sounds very impressive, but you say that the impact to an organization is really cultural, not the technology. How so?
Sure. So that's a very good description of our technology, but I think the cultural impact is there's lots of ways organizations collect ideas, but unfortunately, in a lot of organizations, the person with the most senior title or who has the loudest voice, whose ideas get heard or implemented. And what IdeaScale or platforms like it do a good job of is saying, hey, here's all of the ideas. And sometimes it's not the guy or gal with the CEO title whose idea is the best or most interesting or even most actionable. So let's pick the idea from the junior most employer, someone sitting in a foreign country who may not be able to express that idea as eloquently as a native English speaker. That is actually the good idea. And that's something that requires some technology and process, but it also requires the organization to admit, it requires the senior people to let go of their ego. And a good example is here at IdeaScale. My ideas regularly do not get implemented because they're bad ideas. And that's okay. That's, it hurts my ego a little bit as a human being. We all have that little bit of ego. But it's actually much better for the organization's performance, as well as for the happiness of people around the organization. My junior people know that, hey, if they've got good ideas, it gets done. And it's not their title or where they sit or whether they have, broken English that matters. It's best ideas win. And that makes people happy and productive.
Well, that's an interesting, as you're talking, I was thinking it's interesting enabler really, because we all want to have a culture of innovation in our organization. And I talk with a lot of folks that talk about, we circle that topic. And yet it's one thing to say it or wish it, but it's another thing to really enable it. And so what you're doing at IdeaScale, and it sounds like what you guys are doing is bringing forth a technology and a system that really then can enable that idea of having an innovative culture and a feeling of freely collaborating and fostering this idea, fostering ideas. So it's an interesting marriage of indeed the people parts of really making an organization perform well and the tools that we use to do that.
Yeah, the analogy I like to draw is, I used to be a carpenter in high school, right? That's how I, paid for, helped pay for college. IdeaScale is like a hammer, right? We have a great tool for pushing in nails, but ultimately, if I give you a hammer and you don't actually want to hammer in nails, nothing's going to get done. So it does require the organizational impetus or desire to innovate. And then once you're willing to do that innovation, we give you tools to do it much, much more effectively. So you definitely need both parts. And we, to the extent possible, we try to help organizations on the first half while also obviously giving them the tool on the second half.
Now, you folks are working with a bunch of clients, many that we know, NASA, McKinsey, Comcast. But I want to ask about the platform being used for software product development specifically. And you mentioned this earlier. How can developers take advantage of this kind of collective intelligence of their community to drive both product innovation and revenue growth?
Sure. So in all transparency, we're probably not the best product ideation platform out there. There's, I think, a couple organizations that are real, not to call it one of my competitors, but AHA, I think is really good at doing it specifically for product development. I think, while certain organizations use us for that, that's not what we're best in class at. We're best in class for talking to your HR departments or your IT departments or engaging with your external stakeholders, whether that be voters or consumers. Okay. I'll just say, yeah, we can do that, but I can't want to be candid. We're probably not best in class at that specific.
Well, fair enough then. I mean, can you give us an example of one organization or one function where you feel that they have really truly been successful using your approach? What did they do and what were the results?
Sure. So I can't name this one because they have not allowed me to use their name publicly. But one of the largest restaurant chains, something I'm sure you and I have dined at, in the past year, they wanted to come up with new menu items. They had a fantastic test kitchen and all these internal employees coming up with new menu items. But they were like, look, we've run out of ideas or we're not coming up with anything great. Let's actually go talk to our customers. So they created a public IdeaScale community to go solicit their millions of customers on what should our new menu item be. Should it be a burger? Should it be a taco? Should it be some sort of chicken wing? And solicited thousands of ideas on what that new item should be, which had kind of two benefits. Number one, it made the customers actually feel heard. But number two, it actually opened up the iris to many more types of ideas than you would get from your, celebrity chefs or whoever's doing the cooking in-house. And that was something, they came up with thousands of ideas and then they actually put that on the menu for their customers like you and I to eat, which was kind of a fun case study for us.
Do you want to be a guest on the Digital Transformation Podcast? Well, it could happen. Tell us about your ideas and advice. What technologies and solutions do you recommend? And how can our listeners benefit from your approach? Be a guest. Find out more at digitaltransformationpodcast.net/guest.
You're listening to the Digital Transformation Podcast.
Our guest today is Nick Jain, CEO of IdeaScale, and we're here talking about the role of innovation and digital transformation in turning a company around. You can find Nick and find out more at IdeaScale.com. We are at the action item round of the program. I'm wondering if you could please provide us with 3 quick action items that our listeners can do to begin to take advantage of your ideas and advice.
Sure. So number one, I would say focus on accuracy, not precision. So generally be in the right ballpark. Don't worry about the decimal places. Don't get caught by sort of paralysis by analysis. Number 2 is figure out 1 or 2 things that you actually care about and go get that done rather than juggle, 8 different initiatives. And number 3, try and focus on things that you, in whatever capacity you are, whether you're CEO, whether you're head of marketing, whether you're a junior developer, on something you are passionate about, because you're much more likely to have the domain expertise as well as the energy to go get it done than something that you don't care about.
Nick, it's been great speaking with you today. We're almost out of time, but before I let you go, one last question. What should executives and business owners be thinking about now and strategizing for today in order to be prepared for the world in 5 years' time?
Sure. I think the biggest thing, and this is, me reflecting my finance or Wall Street background, is really think about what makes a business tick. So I think over the last decade, especially in technology, there's been a grow at any cost mentality. And we're now shifting back to a business actually has to know how to run a business, have positive ROI, be profitable. And I think business leaders in any industry, but especially technology, that don't readjust to the new reality of knowing how to run a business are going to struggle, and their organizations are going to suffer, as we're unfortunately obviously seeing with some of the layoffs that have occurred in my sector. And thankfully, we have avoided, which we're very proud of.
That is Nick Jain with IdeaScale. Find him at IdeaScale.com. Nick, thank you so much for being our guest today on the Digital Transformation Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It's been an honor.
That'll do it for this episode of the Digital Transformation Podcast. But join me next time when I continue to talk to best-selling authors, innovative thought leaders, and top-shelf executives, all driving today's digital success. And I'll talk to you next time on the Digital Transformation Podcast.